Joker 2 being a box office dud was always the most likely outcome, okay? We kind of got to face facts. Even, walking through all of the pre-release information, Lady Gaga, musical, did it really need a sequel? Todd Phillips' track record with sequels, all of those caveats aside, there was an opportunity there to make a pretty decent film, but they decided to take the darkest path possible, and all of these subsequent videos from people just looking back at this disaster and wondering what went wrong could have been prevented. Okay, this could have been also on a different trajectory, even if the film was just fine. Okay, maybe a little bit disappointing in comparison to the original because it was just the story that was self-contained, didn't require a follow-up, but it happened because the studio came and parked a Brinks truck outside of everybody's home attached to the original, and they just thought, what the hell, the check's gonna cash, let's go get our bag and then mosey off into the sunset. If they would have just done that, if it would have just simply been one of those of the same quality, right? If you guys are of similar age, you'll remember the straight to DVD, the straight to VHS sequel. If it would have been of that caliber, I might have got this video from a bunch of people where it's like, oh, take a look at, the box office over the weekend. And the fact of the matter is, by the end of this week, and at least at the latest next week, we're going to be sub $1 million at the box office, because as it sits right now, 1.8 million on a Monday. You might get a little rebound for a Tuesday, but then it's going to be dropping hard for Wednesday and Thursday, and then its second weekend off the back of an abysmal word of mouth reviews, and this film being spoiled to hell and back time and time again by everybody who's talking about it, warning people against going to watch it. It's going to be gone. It's going to be forgotten. You won't get the laughs that you did out of Madam Web earlier this year. You're not going to be getting the, second look word of mouth where, actually, there's just people that didn't quite understand it, and it's actually pretty good. Don't have to look back at the old track record of the DC franchise to notice that, actually this is the good one. That's what ended up happening with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, because you remember that came off of the abysmal dud that was Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. This right here is the sixth consecutive DC disaster, and this is going to lead right up into the next release being James Gunn's Superman in July. Best of luck, homie, because this right here just poisoned the well better than anybody could have possibly foreseen. But just a couple of quick facts, right? Stuff that was coming out before any of the new information, specifically from Todd Phillips and co, that we're going to go over here. But care of Culture Crave, they just basically assembled a lot of the quotes that we've seen from the Hollywood Reporter, GQs, Vanity Fairs, Varieties, all of the trade rags, all of those interviews that Joaquin, Lady Gaga, Phillips were giving in the lead up to this, to just show you that yeah, this was gonna suck. All of the dots were there to connect. You were trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. I know I definitely was. Maybe a lot of other people feel better about themselves for, I called a bomb from the offset. And it's like, well, there was every opportunity for this to be good. They just decided to do the opposite of that. But the idea for the sequel came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. Not necessarily terrible news, but yeah, without some refinement, could be a little bit rough. Contemplated putting on a Broadway show before committing to making a movie. That's why a lot of people went, okay, I guess, if that was your concept for this, and then Warner Brothers wanted to make it a movie, I guess that kind of makes sense why it's going to be a musical. Todd Phillips had free reign with Warner Brothers wanting him to do his thing, and the film had no test screenings. We talked about this in the previous video, how there were no test screenings, and, well, would it have helped? Would it have changed any of the follies with the eventual product? It's tough to say, really. Lady Gaga signed on before the script was finished, and yeah, it's interesting, because there's also been some snippets from interviews from her as well, saying that she would look out from her trailer and see different production staff writing the scenes right out there. So yeah, troubled production. We're going to be hearing about this, for a very long time. Anyways, a new DC boss, James Gunn, had zero involvement, gave notes, but Todd Phillips didn't use them. Interesting. I'd love to know what those notes from James Gunn were, and I'd imagine we'll probably get some sort of insight in that before the release of Superman, because Gunn's gonna have to run some cover-up for this abomination, because this is it. This is it for DC. This is very much overshadowing one of the biggest shows out there right now, Penguin. which is also a big issue for James Gunn because that still is an Elseworlds story that could have potentially tied in if the Joker wasn't a complete and total flop, and it's also tying in with a Batman 2 movie that might be coming out sometime. Oh my god, DC's such a mess, but okay. The film had a huge budget, yes, $200 million, including, yes, $20 million for Joaquin Phoenix. I thought, yeah, Todd Phillips also got a $20 or $15 million payday, and 12 for Lady Gaga. Musical aspect was largely downplayed in the marketing, with director Todd Phillips at first insisting it wasn't one. Yeah, but this one is always explained as being a musical. That was some of the first snippets of marketing that I remember ever since this got announced a couple years back. Christopher Nolan, now this one's interesting, right? Reportedly changed the ending of the first movie because it ended with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker carving a smile. I've heard conflicting reports on this. Whether or not he carved a smile into somebody else's face or onto his own is still out in the ether. But this is, of course, a rumor, so it's a rumor on a rumor, so take it however you will. There was no resistance to the sequel with Nolan leaving WB, which, yeah, spoiler, I guess, for the nobody who actually cares at this point in time. After Arthur gets shanked at the end of the film, the real Joker gives him the old Glasgow smile to end the film on such an upbeat note after he just gets reverted into being a loser in worse shape than he was than at the beginning of the original Joker, as just the sad sack who had been turned into a prison guard fleshlight and dumped by his hypergamous girlfriend. Todd Phillips was secluded on a ranch during opening weekend. Interesting. That was very interesting. We touched on that a little bit earlier, but now in the wake of all of this disaster, he's come out and said a couple of things, but we'll get to that in due time. Film was panned by fans and critics, currently holding 33 critic score and a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not great at all. I don't think that it's moved all that much. Cinema score was a D, lowest ever for a comic book film. I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt last time we were talking about that. I thought that was the lowest score recently, but ever for a comic book film, and there's been some truly abysmal comic book adjacent films, and this one ends up taking the cake. Like Madam Web was like an atrociously shot, acted, and directed film, but at least it was kind of unintentionally funny. It didn't even get a D. Domestically, yes, opened with $37.8 million, lower than, yes, Morbius, The Marvels, The Flash, and yeah, the only thing that it wasn't lower than was it previously mentioned, Madame Web, which opened with $15.3 million. I can't believe that happened this year, but it still manages to hold one low water mark that Joker 2 can't take away from it. Needs $450 million globally to break even. It's so interesting how with this example, the Access Media is finally starting to accept the reality that in order for a film to break even, it needs to produce 2 to 3 times their production budget at the box office in order to break even. It's funny how they'll let that slip this time around, because it's not even going to threaten getting close to this, because yeah, Warner Brothers is already $40 billion in debt, so yeah, there's not going to be a Joker 3, and there might not be a Warner Brothers studio as we know it right now going into the future, because you have a film that's domestically sitting at $39.5 million, $116 million worldwide, and you had the original open just about this time 5 years ago, which is another mark against it, because you're making a sequel to a film and you got a 5-year gap between. That's a lot. There's there's other direct comparisons that you can make with TV shows that see tremendous audience retention issues between the conclusion of season 1 and the premiere of season 2 if they have too much of a gap. Rings of Power laughably went through that, and even House of the Dragon as well. So there's another issue to raise on that, but as you can see the numbers there, you know, over $1 billion, nearly 1.1, and on its first day in theaters, domestic total eclipses that the entire opening weekend and nearly eclipsed the first 4 days in release. This is it's not good, kids. It's really not good. And while we've been speculating whether or not it was intentional by the people in charge of this to tank the project because the wrong people liked the first one, I think we're starting to get some information to that. And well, I'm going from the incompetence camp, now a little bit leaning into the malice camp, because now Todd Phillips is opening his yap. He's rewriting history, not just of his own film, where if you watch it and you just think that's not what you put in the first one. Now he's just going back and trying to retcon that, but here's a wonderful concept called death of the author, where your input is not really required. What you put on screen is different than what you're describing. This isn't a matter of interpretation. This is just simply you trying to, I don't know, man, save your own ass, because there were so many things around this of people saying, oh yeah, this is a big FU to the studio. Oh, Todd Phillips didn't want to make this film, right? Because that's also what else is being said. I wanted nothing to do with this $200 million misfire. I wanted nothing to do with this, but you sure as hell signed the check. You decided, okay, if Warner Brothers is going to go ahead and move forward building on my original vision, I might as well helmet, and I might as well get 7 or 8 digits to my name for it. Nah, screw it. We could get the old band back together and have another, fun few months on Warner Brothers' dime. Like, you could do that, but then you could also produce an adequate or even good film on your way out the door. Because here's the thing, okay? For as many people that are going to be on your side for, flipping the bird to Warner Brothers, that's also not exactly going to reflect well on your own personal CV. Fact of the matter is, as a filmmaker, you're going to have to work with a multitude of studios. You're going to have to work with all of those movie houses that seen you act like a petulant child with one of their competitors, and in the back of their mind go, yeah, you know what? It's very likely that he ends up doing that to us. So I don't know, maybe it's this whole intergalactic underwater 4D backgammon that he's trying to pull here. Well, actually, this was an FU to Warner Brothers, but then after, that got exposed, I had to realize that, I got to work in the industry still, so now I got to just crap on the fans for the people who the media didn't like to begin with, so that I can get back in good with other executives so I can continue my career, and all in due time, people will forget about this, so I could just sweep it under the rug. I don't know what's going on here. I really don't know. Side of him trying to lie about facts, because a Joker 2 director says Arthur Fleck was never Joker. He's an unwitting icon, and Joker is this idea. I'm an idea that Gotham people put on him. Yeah, but it's interesting because I also seen this snipped out a number of times on social media where directly in the script, it's acknowledged that, yeah, Arthur is Joker. But his justification for coming to this conclusion, well, it's interesting. Okay, spoilers, I guess, if you care, but whatever. Okay. Murder trial at the center of Joker Folie, Deux ends in explosive fashion. A bomb goes off and destroys the courtroom after Arthur Fleck decides to defend himself and confess that the Joker is not some split personality of his, nor does he even exist. It's been Arthur all along, and he's guilty of the murders he's on trial for. Yeah, because apparently he was getting pushed into claiming insanity for the murders that he committed in the first one in order to use that as a justifiable defense, and even with the opening animation that is getting praised by people for just looking very good, being quite a visual feast, doesn't really make sense, because the guy that you seen in the first Joker was somebody who was going through a metamorphosis when he was on the Murray Show, finally embracing that change, which runs contrary to the animation at the beginning of this pile of shit that characterizes the Joker as just simply a shadow that moves from host to host, and it just so happened to land upon Arthur, which would even still be useful as a defense, but no. He just wants to be a useless sad sack because his girl left him. You realize that everything is so corrupt, it's never going to change, and the only way to fix it is to burn it all down, so that he just confesses. When the guards kill that kid in the hospital, he realizes that dressing up in makeup, putting on this thing, is not changing anything. In some ways, he's accepted the fact that he's always been Arthur Fleck. He's never been this thing that's been put upon him, this idea that Gotham people put on him that he represents. He's an unwitting icon. The thing was placed on him, and he doesn't want to live as a fake anymore. He wants to be who he is, which is, yeah, that sounds like an interesting story. It's just not what you put to film in the first one. Oh, but my unreliable narrator. So what, are we just going to go ahead and use this spiteful string of celluloid to recharacterize the first? Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Arthur's decision to revoke the Joker is off-putting to Lady Gaga's Lee, who spends a majority of the film, yes, trying to provoke the Joker persona to fully take over Arthur's mind. Yeah, she never calls Arthur by his real name until the last encounter where she leaves him, now that it's clear that the Joker does not exist. Yeah, that's the Ibristophile, Lee Quinzel coming out. Todd Phillips also said, there's a reason that, I don't know if you guys are not media literate or not, but if you ever noticed the release of Joker, okay, you take a look at the movie poster, especially with the original, where does it say The Joker? It just says Joker. Remember when I said that I wanted to put a real movie into a superhero movie? You guys just weren't simply paying attention. Which is where all of this post-mortem cope is coming around. No, I actually want nothing to do with this. Nah, don't worry about it, okay? Insiders say the duo's glaring absence from the film that is based on one of the biggest draws in DC canon underscores the dysfunctional dynamic that played out behind the scenes of the ill-fated Warner Brothers musical. Talking about how, yeah, David Zaslav and Todd Phillips weren't at the big red carpet premieres. You kind of knew that something was up. But yes, as the animated title card sequence unspooled inside the iconic Hollywood cinema in the opening minutes, it became apparent that Phillips had just given DC the middle finger. There was no DC Studios logo. And the first movie was about some down on his luck mentally ill guy in the downtrodden city. It makes maybe $150 million worldwide, not $1 billion, says a source familiar with the internal awkwardness. People showed up because that guy was Joker. Now that the dust has settled on the sequel's disastrous opening weekend, plenty of soul searching is taking place on the Burbank lot, with the overarching question being asked: why spend $200 million to make and nearly $100 million to market a tentpole that ignores the DC fan base and ignores, maybe putting it mildly, as Rolling Stone's review of the film succinctly put it, yes, Joker Folie Deux has a message to fans: go fuck yourself, which is exactly the way that the fans have responded to this dumpster fire. And this won't be the last time we're talking about this, because yeah, I kind of got a feeling there's going to be some rumors, there's going to be some leaks, and hell, there might even be some outright interviews just letting you know how big of a disaster this is, because this isn't just a bad sequel. This isn't just a bad movie. This is a spiteful movie. This is a hateful movie from a studio that is staffed by stupid people, tangentially related to a franchise that is on death's door. This could have done a lot helping out the next phase, but instead, if James Gunn doesn't deliver with Superman, people are going to be looking back at this going, yep, Joker 2 did a little bit more than kill its own prospects. Actually did something that the Joker in the comics couldn't even do, ended the DC universe. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.